The cast and crew of The Chosen recently completed a solemn concluding sequence known as the Last Supper. This sequence marked the conclusion of filming for Season 5. The production team faced a flood of emotions and several challenges during the final days of filming. A behind-the-scenes film captured these events, revealing the bittersweet and symbolic nature of the undertaking. A crew member's exclamation in the movie, "Look at this is the last day," sets the tone for the intensely charged atmosphere on the set. Among the various possibilities that were available, we decided to use a small, intimate chamber for the last scene because of the symbolic value it possessed. When asked about the atmosphere, a member of the crew made the following observation: "There's something symbolic about being in this small room, kind of trapped together." This will be The Chosen's most extensive season to date, taking place during the 5th season. According to the Christian calendar, the week that is believed to be the holiest is known as Holy Week. We observed this week to commemorate the final days of Jesus Christ's earthly life, which culminated in his crucifixion and resurrection. Palm Sunday marks the beginning of the festival, which culminates on Easter Sunday as the most important day. Each day of Holy Week carries a distinct significance, often marked by a range of rites and rituals unique to various Christian religions. On Palm Sunday, Jerusalem met Jesus with palm branches as a sign of their welcome. People commonly refer to this day as Palm Sunday. We set aside the following days, Holy Monday and Holy Tuesday, to commemorate the teachings and activities that Jesus carried out before his arrest. On Holy Monday, there are particular customs that commemorate the fact that Jesus cleansed the temple and cursed the fig tree. These traditions are in place to honor the event. On the other hand, people focus their attention on the debates that Jesus had with the leaders of the religious establishment on Holy Tuesday. Spy Wednesday honors Judas Iscariot's decision to betray Jesus. The name of this day comes from the fact that Judas Iscariot betrayed his teacher by spying for the opportunity to have him betray him. On the anniversary of Easter Thursday, people celebrate the Last Supper, the moment when Jesus shared his final meal with his apostles and established the Eucharist. The Latin word mandatum, which means command, is the source of the word mandi, a reference to Jesus' commandment to love and serve others. Many churches today reenact the act of washing others' feet, which Jesus performed as a gesture of humility toward his disciples. Good Friday serves as a solemn day for reflecting on the suffering and sacrifice that Jesus Christ endured. We commemorate the crucifixion of Jesus Christ on this day. During their services, Christians often retell the story of the Passion, and many also engage in various types of meditation, such as the Stations of the Cross. When Jesus laid his corpse to rest in the tomb, it was on the day that is known as Holy Saturday. A number of churches will hold an Easter vigil in the evening, and it is a day for people to be silent and focus on themselves. On this occasion, the first Easter celebration will take place, which will also coincide with the lighting of the Paschal candle. Easter Sunday, the most joyous day in the Christian calendar, is the day that culminates the week. People celebrated in honor of Jesus' resurrection. While they were filming the closing scene and signing and sealing the main event of the program, the team celebrated their hard work and anxiously awaited post-production and future seasons of The Chosen. They also eagerly anticipated additional seasons of the show. Be sure to check back with Collider for any details regarding The Chosen. In the upcoming 5th season of The Chosen, there will be some intriguing new developments. Even though production has already concluded, a recently released film continues to showcase behind-the-scenes footage and provide glimpses into the upcoming season. Characters such as Tamar, Mary Magdalene, and Jonah are performing their farewell scenes, and fans will have the opportunity to watch them. In comparison to past seasons, this one will have a greater number of scenes that only involve a small number of females. Jonah will join the group, but Rama will not. The two of them are working together in an effort to help Jesus. Judas dedicates a significant portion of the video to convincing his fellow apostles that Jesus' actions in Jerusalem would ultimately lead to their own demise. Every single one of the other apostles is likewise furious and attempting to comprehend the reasons behind Jesus' actions. However, as you are aware, the fact that the apostles do not comprehend Jesus has been a significant topic throughout The Chosen. There is always one or two, and sometimes even more, steps behind in the process of trying to figure out what Jesus is doing and why he is doing it. In the 5th season, we will go deeper into this very topic. The apostles fail to understand who Jesus is referring to when he predicts that one of them will betray him in Dallas. The brutal betrayal of Judas occurred in Dallas, the city's location. Jenkins asserts that they were unable to comprehend the situation, that there was no designated hallway for it, and that they were unable to identify the potential culprit. Is that the case? What was the reason they were unable to identify the person? Judas, I find it fascinating to investigate how something has an effect. All of the scenes they filmed between Judas and Jesus have been very distressing this time of year, Dallas said. This research will also investigate Jesus' foreknowledge of future events and his approach to Judas, given his awareness that Judas would be the one to betray him. Following the events that took place at the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games, the most significant event of the season will be the final dinner that Dallas has already made public. The representation of Jesus depicted him sitting at a U-shaped table with the most revered individual on his right and the betrayer on his left. Even though the depiction of the pivotal event garnered significantly more love and adoration than the Olympics, some individuals found it problematic because the betrayer sat on his left. On the other hand, the Bible misrepresented the Last Supper, which is more of a Western concept than an Eastern one, where they lay down on the ground on one another's bosoms while accepting that they should be reclining like we saw the pilot and his guests eat at the end of the season. Why is it going to be betrayed with tables and chairs, which is more of a Western concept than an Eastern one? I suspect they chose this method for filming the scene because it was easier and more convenient for them, especially considering the length of the scene. I anticipate repeating the Last Supper throughout the entire episode. Fans have voiced their discontent with Peter's seat at the final table, despite the fact that the U-shaped table most likely made the filming process easier. Some people believe that Peter should have sat on the left side of Jesus instead of Judas, or on the right side where John sat. Are there any particular issues with the placement of the apostles? The Transfiguration omission in Season 5 is another point of contention among viewers. Several times, Dallas has stated that he does not intend for the show to include the Transfiguration. Incorporating Transfiguration into the show's narrative would not be beneficial. While Dallas had previously claimed that he would not represent Jesus walking on water either, he ultimately opted to do it as a surprise at the conclusion of the 3rd season of the show. As a result, the official trailer for the 5th season may include a hint at the Transfiguration, which will give us the opportunity to witness that momentous event. The Gospels, on the other hand, state that the Transfiguration takes place at some point after Peter and Jesus had made their original statement. This indicates that the transformation is somewhat delayed, although I could imagine it as a flashback scene. Season 4 presented these events before Lazarus' resurrection, suggesting a significant delay in the Transfiguration. In your opinion, what do you believe will happen at the end of the season? Because of Judas' treachery, it is highly likely that we will be present for Jesus' arrest in the Garden of Gethsemane. Make sure you are prepared to cry. That's all I have to say. On the other hand, when can we anticipate the release of these new episodes? We anticipate the release of all 8 episodes in theaters for the first time in early 2025. The Chosen website and app will offer the episodes for free for 1 month. Rest assured that we have already found a solution to the problem that caused the delay in the release of Season 4. At the beginning of the 4th episode, there is a montage of the first missionary voyage of the apostles that is primarily quiet and in black and white. We follow the 6 pairs as they minister to those who are afflicted with illness, cast out demons, proclaim the kingdom of God, reason with those who do not believe, care for those who are in need, and instruct others in the Lord's Prayer. When they first discover that they are able to successfully perform miracles, it is obvious that the disciples are astonished and excited by this discovery. As time goes on, it appears that they are becoming more self-assured and courageous. Immediately following the credits, we are shown that the disciples have returned to their hometown of Capernaum and are currently attending services in the synagogue. Each of them appears to be quietly pondering on their most recent trek. After some time has passed, we see Simon Peter return to his residence, surprise Eden by sneaking up on her while she is in the process of cleaning the house. Within a short period of time, it becomes obvious that there is a disconnection between the two of them. As a result of his tiredness, Simon fails to realize that Eden has redecorated, and he also fails to recognize what she would like him to do on the first day that they are back together. The situation is made much more difficult by the fact that he has invited the other apostles to come over the following day. He appears to be unaware of how much work it will be for her, especially considering the filthy water source. While the apostles are attempting to work through their experiences together during the gathering that takes place in Simon's house, the passive-aggressive conflict that has been going on between Eden and Simon continues to grow. Big James is irritated by the fact that Jesus has bestowed upon them a great deal of power without also bestowing upon them a crystal clear comprehension of what is taking place. As he works through this, the other disciples make an effort to assist him. The disciples are reprimanded by Eden for their argumentative and speculative behavior when they might just wait and ask Jesus. Simon, who is aware of the frustration that his wife is experiencing, reprimands the group for not showing her sufficient respect. Nonetheless, his words do not alleviate the tension. As soon as Andrew becomes aware of the conflict that exists between Eden and Simon, he conveys his concern to his brother. While Eden and Simon are lying in bed that night, they are silently turned away from one another, and we can see that the animosity between them is still seething. When Simon wakes up the following day, he makes a fumbling attempt to ask his wife what he has done wrong and how he might make things right. At the same time as they are conversing, Jesus arrives at their door. Nearly instantaneously, a boisterous crowd gathers around their residence, exacerbating the already chaotic situation. Due to the fact that Jesus is responsible for causing all of this mayhem, Simon becomes enraged and rushes out of the house. After some time has passed, Simon comes to notice Gaius standing outside of the synagogue. A heart-to-heart conversation takes place between them after some initial hostility has subsided. During this conversation, Simon vents his frustration at Jesus and the situation at home, and Gaius offers his sympathies. The warning that Gaius gives is that Quintus is upset over the tent city, and they had better hope that he is unaware that Jesus has returned to town. In an effort to divert Quintus' attention, they decide to construct a plan to fix the cistern together the following day. Simon receives encouragement from Gaius to convey to Eden that she was correct and that he is sorry. Yosef the Pharisee is the first person to arrive at the scene when it is discovered that the water cistern that is located outside of the synagogue has gotten contaminated with sewage. Romans arrive and explain that, despite the fact that it might be their job to fix it, they would prefer to have the synagogue be the one to shoulder the cost of doing so. Due to the fact that the cistern is the principal source of water supply for the city, Yosef has agreed to get the materials as swiftly as feasible. Upon his return to the synagogue, he informs the congregation about what transpired with Jairus and adds that his family in Jerusalem is involved in the building industry and is able to pay for the materials. As they continue their conversation, they come upon an official request for a report regarding the teachings of Jesus that was made by Shmuel. This request was sent under the authority of Shammai, a leading Pharisee. It is revealed to us that Jairus has studied Yosef's record of the Sermon on the Mount as well as other reports about Jesus, and as a result, he has come to the conclusion that Jesus is the Messiah, despite the fact that this belief is in direct opposition to the conventional notion of a military Messiah. Due to the fact that Yosef's anxiousness has increased and his enthusiasm for Jesus has experienced a slight decrease, he is initially concerned about the potential difficulty that they could get into for discussing Jesus in this manner. In the end, Jairus is successful in persuading him that it is worthwhile to pursue and that they should report to Shmuel that they need to tone down the revolutionary aspect of the words that Jesus spoke. For the purpose of his investigation into the Messiah, Jairus goes back to his house to grab some scrolls. While he is there, his daughter has a serious illness. While he and his wife are taking her to her room, he assures her that he will locate a physician. After some time has passed, Jairus informs Yosef about the illness that his daughter is experiencing and explains that it must have been brought on by the contaminated water. The fact that he believes in Jesus causes him to express dread that God may be punishing him. It is not too late to stop the investigation, according to Yosef, who accuses himself of being the one who exposed Jairus to the teachings of Jesus. On the other hand, Jairus comes to the realization that he cannot abandon what he has discovered in faith that he has developed toward Jesus. An assembly of the Sanhedrin is taking place in Jerusalem at this point. In the book of Daniel chapter 7 verse 13, the chief of the Sanhedrin issues an injunction that condemns false prophecy and rogue preachers, particularly those who assert that they are the Son of Man. Despite the fact that Shmuel's friend Yanni applauds him for successfully obtaining this decree, Shmuel does not feel content with his accomplishment. His companion says that now that the edict has been distributed, they can simply wait for reports of Jesus to arrive to them. He wants to go and find Jesus, but his friend tells him that they can wait for them. At the conclusion of the episode, Jairus' wife shares the news that their daughter's condition has progressed to a more serious state. In a state of alarm, she screams out for Jairus. Eden sets out to run some errands after Simon has returned home from his trip with the first of his return. A strange woman approaches her while she is out and wants to wash her clothing when she returns. In spite of the fact that Eden declines the offer, the woman offers to show her a hidden spring from which she can collect water. This is because the pollution problem has caused a traffic gridlock at the well that Eden had intended to use. During the course of their journey, Eden finds out that her new companion is Veronica and that she is a member of the local community. With addition to this, she observes that Veronica's laundry is drenched with blood. Once again, Eden and Veronica make their way back to the spring the next day. It is explained by Veronica that she traveled to this town in order to listen to Jesus. She is taken aback by the fact that Eden, who is irritated by Simon, does not appear to be overly enthusiastic about Jesus. According to Veronica, she has been suffering from her bleeding ailment for a period of 12 years. This is the reason why she is unable to have a husband and why her family has disowned her. The act of touching a woman who is bleeding causes a person to automatically become unclean. All of her money has been spent on medical professionals, but to no result. Eden asks Veronica how she can make it through when there is no hope, and Veronica responds by saying that she hasn't completely given up hope. There is a possibility that she has not yet had the opportunity to test out something, such as Jesus. After some time has passed, Veronica presents a man with the garments that she has washed for him. As soon as he becomes aware of the fact that she is bleeding, he publicly humiliates her for being dirty and for bringing them upon himself. Both Tamar and Mary Magdalene are currently examining the contents of Matthew's house in order to determine the amount of money they can make by selling various items. Matthew's taste is something that Tamar is quite critical about, which irritates Mary. Mary informs her that she could always sell her jewelry, but Tamar explains that each piece stems from an ancestor and have a significant meaning for her. Mary is reminded that she could always sell her jewelry. Mary makes the suggestion that this could be a type of paganism or animism, which is something that Tamar finds offensive. Mary agrees with Tamar that she is unaware of what she has been through, and Tamar says the same thing. According to Tamar, she has heard rumors. When Zebedee arrives with the oil that he intends to sell, Tamar is utterly repulsed by the flavor of the material. Zebedee seems unfazed by the situation and begs for comments and solutions. Tamar first makes a few recommendations, and then she suggests that they put Joanna's money into the oil firm. In spite of the fact that Mary is irritated by Tamar's behavior, she agrees that they can talk to Judas. Finally, Zebedee decides to sell his yacht. When asked why Zebedee would do something like this, the man is startled, but Zebedee answers that it is because he is focused on serving Jesus. In the present moment, this entails selling the boat in order to concentrate on the oil company. Episode 4 of the third season of The Chosen, a review. As I mentioned before, although I did not find episode 4 to be as stunning as episodes 1 to 3, I still found it to be satisfactory, and it appeared to fulfill the objectives of the season as a whole. Nevertheless, it was not a flawless episode, so before I discuss the aspects of it that I appreciated, I would like to bring up a few problems. This introductory montage seemed to go on for a little bit too long. The sequences started to experience a sense of repetition. The struggle between Tamar and Mary Magdalene is something that I find enjoyable, yet their subplot requires larger stakes and a greater sense of urgency. Why should I really care about Zebedee's oil business at this point? I don't see any connection between the two. They would have been able to better understand the significance of their oil enterprise if there had been a scene in which they were attempting to provide for the impoverished people living in Tent City, but then ran out of money. The program needs to put in more effort to make us care about what happens, but I have no doubt that everything is building up somewhere. In addition, the scene that consisted of simply Zebedee seemed a little pointless because it did not even further the plotline that was being discussed. The way in which Mary Magdalene described Tamar's necklace as a reflection of animism struck me as both outdated and strange. I was unable to imagine a Jew living during that time period utilizing language of that nature. The Sanhedrin edict truly ought to have been issued at the conclusion of the second season. Unless that was the case, I believe that it may have been placed in a more prominent position in this episode in order to stress the significance of what was occurring. In spite of those criticisms, the following is what I like most about the episode. The beginning was enjoyable to me, despite the fact that it might have been a little bit too lengthy. The fact that we weren't going to get a buddy cop episode that followed the disciples on their mission was something that I was disappointed about going into the episode, but the opener managed to win me over. Some of the most memorable scenes include the very first scene, in which John and Thomas are taken aback by the fact that they had successfully treated the girl, as well as the scene in which Simon the Zealot physically restrains the demoniac while Matthew exorcises the demon. Despite the fact that there was a lot going on in the episode, the fact that the water supply was polluted by the pollution gave a sense of dramatic unity that prevented things from appearing to be unpredictable. I think it's great that we were able to witness the apostles on their first mission and how they responded to it in a number of different ways. Their conversation was not only illuminating from a theological standpoint, but it also felt genuine. As someone who has worked in the ministry, I found the struggle that occurred between Simon Peter and Eden to be extremely genuine and relevant. It would appear that Yusuf and Jairus are the new seeker characters for the currently ongoing season. The manner that Yusuf appears to bend back and forth is intriguing to me. To tell you the truth, I have no idea what will happen to his character, which is both refreshing and feels like it is based on real life. It's great that we was finally able to witness Simon Peter's anger directed at Jesus directly. Once more, it seemed to be quite relatable. It was a pleasant surprise to witness the relationship that existed between Gaius and Simon Peter. Despite the fact that there are not many shows that are able to portray the way in which guys talk about their difficulties with one another and earn each other's trust, their moment together did an excellent job of doing so. I have already mentioned that despite the issues, there was a great deal to love in the fourth episode. The Chosen Season 3 Episode 4 covers the following key themes. Episode 4 delves into a few of the most important concepts and sheds more light on the overarching themes that have been present throughout the season. A couple concepts that particularly stood out to me are as follows. The pleasure and the price of serving Jesus. The opening montage presented us with a large number of photographs depicting the apostles offering their services to Jesus. We were able to concentrate all of our attention on the nonverbal responses of the apostles as well as the people that they were helping because we were unable to obtain any audio. In most cases, we observed expressions of astonishment, awe, and excitement on people's faces. As was mentioned earlier, the disciples themselves appear to be just as shocked and enthusiastic as the rest of the congregation. On the other hand, there are just a few instances of opposition and difficulties that bring to light the price that must be paid to serve Jesus. The passionate discussion that took place among the apostles after they had returned from their journey offers a glimpse into the emotional and spiritual toll that their mission had taken on them. Moreover, it appears that the plot involving Tamar, Mary Magdalene, and Zebedee is intended to drive home this message by comparing the fact that Tamar is unwilling to sell her jewelry with the fact that Zebedee is eager to sell his boat. It is maybe the most essential thing that this episode demonstrates to us is how Simon has become fatigued from his ministry and is not prepared for life with Eden once he returns home. During the entirety of episode 4, it is possible that Eden herself will bear the most evident cost of serving Jesus. It is clear that she has experienced feelings of isolation caused by the absence of her husband. As if things were already difficult, when Simon comes back, she is required to work 12 times as hard as she normally would in order to clean, bake bread, and wash the clothes of his co-workers. It goes without saying that the actual cost for both Simon and Eden is the strain that exists in their relationship as a consequence of this situation. This tension makes them less capable of resolving minor disagreements and conflicts. I wasn't expecting the season to put so much attention on the relationship cost when it started off by predicting the cost of following Jesus, but I'm glad that it has. I'm glad that it has. As I have mentioned in the past, as someone who has been involved in the ministry, I found this to be very true to life. You will become exhausted from ministry, and your family members will be burdened with new responsibilities, which will create the ideal conditions for confrontation. The presence of this dynamic, which I am assuming will continue for the next few episodes, elucidates for me the reason why Dallas has stated that the theme of the season is the well-known invitation to rest that Jesus extended to his followers. I will give you rest if you come to me, all of you who are working hard and carrying a lot of weight. Learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls if you take my yoke upon you and learn from me. Therefore my weight is light, and my yoke is easy. Matthew 11:28-30, English Standard Version. How much does it cost to seek the truth? The Jairus and Yosef plot emphasizes the cost of seeking the truth, in contrast to the storylines that involve the disciples, which center on the sacrifices that were made in order to serve Jesus. The conversation that takes place between Jairus and Yosef provides us with a glimpse into the anxieties and dangers that these two individuals who are seeking to learn more about Jesus are required to face in order to evaluate their beliefs about him. The contrast between Jairus' brazen commitment and Yosef's scared wavering that emerges from their chats is something that I find particularly interesting. However, I am still uncertain as to whether or not Yosef will have the capacity to maintain his dedication to the truth in the event that he is put to the test. The proclamation that was made in the Sanhedrin drives home the sense of impending danger and makes it abundantly evident that they are not merely being cautious. There may be serious consequences for them if they chose to continue looking for the truth. The fact that Jairus is worried that God might punish him for following Jesus is another aspect that I find appealing. I can't help but think that this dread would strike a chord with viewers who, while having been brought up in a different faith similar to Islam, are looking for the truth about Jesus. Are you clean or unclean? Although it was evident that the idea of ceremonial purity and impurity, being clean or unclean, would be discussed in an episode titled Clean, I was curious to see how it was presented in all of the different ways that it was presented. The sick and demonized individuals that the apostles come across are not only suffering physically, they are also suffering from a state of uncleanness that is unending. In addition, once they have been recovered, they will regain the ability to perform ritual washings. In the first sitting that takes place in the synagogue, the reading is taken from Leviticus, which contains the regulations that govern how bodily discharges render a person unclean. Because of the sewage, the cistern of the synagogue is not only dirty and unpleasant, but it is also ritually unclean. Jairus' daughter becomes ill as a result of the contaminated water in the cistern. Because of her bleeding condition, Veronica is in a state of uncleanness that will last for an unknown amount of time. There is a brief discussion on how some of the apostles walked through Gentile cities, which would have been deemed filthy during the debriefing that takes place with the apostles. In the event that Tamar's necklace is of a pagan origin, it may be seen as impure. Due to the fact that drinking from Gaius' flask would render him filthy, Simon does not sip from it. Following Gaius' assertion that Jews make life more difficult for themselves as a result of their quest of ceremonial purity, Simon expresses his belief that Jesus will bring about a shift in this regard. With relation to the storyline, the majority of what happens in Episode 4 is the establishment of problems that will be remedied in Episode 5 and the remaining episodes of Season 3. With regard to the topic of uncleanness, the same holds true. The events that occurred in Episode 4 that were discussed before brought up a range of thematic issues about what ritual purity and impurity are, but we will have to wait until Episode 5 to find out the solutions to these questions. Enlightenment and spiritual enablement. There were several powerful pictures of spiritual empowerment and spiritual gifts that were presented to us in the opening montage. The apostles' obvious amazement, which they expressed when exercising spiritual authority, made it abundantly plain that the power they were exercising did not belong to them personally. Later on, when Big James is complaining about how Jesus gave them power and not understanding, Judas explains that Jesus did not actually give them power in the first place. Rather, he was working with them in some way at the times when they performed miracles, even though he was not physically present. Although the Chosen has not provided a great deal of information regarding the Holy Spirit up to this point, I believe that exchanges such as this are intended to provide the groundwork for a debate on what it means to have the Spirit of Jesus reside within us. In addition, the investigation of spiritual gifts and empowerment touches on the subject of motivations and personalities. Big James is concerned by the sensation of spiritual empowerment for a number of reasons, one of which is that he feels like a hypocrite when he preaches ideas and exhortations that are beyond his own grasp and maturity. With regard to John, on the other hand, he explains how much he cherished the sensation of power, and Philip cautions him that this could lead to temptation. Comparison of pride and humility. In spite of the fact that Philip's caution to John is the most direct warning against pride, we observe the contrast between humility and pride throughout the tale. The haughty entitlement that Simon demonstrates upon his return from his travels is the root cause of a significant portion of the problems that he has with Eden. On the other hand, the advice that Gaius gives at the end of the episode for resolving a quarrel between the spouses, "You are right, I'm sorry," is all about having humility. Mary Magdalene and Tamar Magdalene both cope with pride in various ways. Tamar displays pride in the way that she looks down on Matthew's style and in the way that she speaks to Mary and Zebedee. On the other hand, Mary Magdalene displays pride in the way that she criticizes Tamar's necklace without understanding it and in her irritation. Meanwhile, Zebedee is a model of humility in every sense of the word. In addition, I believe that Veronica is supposed to be a model of humility because of the submissive manner in which she communicates with Eden and the fact that she is willing to cling to hope. In the meantime, it is very evident that Shmuel and the Sanhedrin are intended to be the pinnacle of pride. To reiterate, we will have to wait until the following episode to find out more about what the Chosen has to say about the tension that exists between pride and humility. Questions to consider before watching the 4th episode of the 3rd season of The Chosen. Due to the fact that none of the disciples appeared in episode 3 of The Chosen season 3, it will be essential to remind the members of your group of the events that occurred in episode 2 regarding the following. In the 2nd episode, do you remember what the mission was that Jesus assigned to the 12 apostles? Why did Jesus entrust them with this responsibility? When Jesus entrusted the apostles with this task, what were some of the concerns that they voiced? Which apostles were connected to one another in this way? What kind of impact did Simon's mission have on his plans to start a family with Eden? What was the mission that Jesus entrusted to Mary Magdalene and Tamar on their journey? How come? With regard to Capernaum, what were some of the possible problems that were developing? When you ask review questions such as these, you will guarantee that the individuals in your group are aware of the latest information and prepared to interact with the new topic that is presented in episode 4. Bible study and discussion questions to consider before watching the 4th episode of the 3rd season of The Chosen. In the beginning of the episode, there is a montage, but other than that, we don't spend much time with the disciples while they are on their journey. Instead, we jump ahead in time to the conclusion of their first missionary experience and observe how they deal with the great calling and authority that Jesus has bestowed upon them. The Bible does not provide a great deal of information regarding the apostles' reactions to the events that occurred during their first journey. The only thing that we know for certain is that after the apostles had returned from their first mission, Jesus took them to the town of Bethsaida in order to rest. However, while they were there, crowds followed them, which ultimately led to the feeding of the 5,000 people, Luke 9:10-17. The Bible does include some information on what transpired after the disciples' second trip, which was the sending of the 72 disciples, despite the fact that it does not provide a great deal of information regarding how the disciples struggled with their first mission. In the course of today's conversation, you will be concentrating on this particular passage. To begin, I would want to tell your group the following. In the 2nd episode of the 3rd season, Jesus dispatched his 12 disciples on a mission to heal those who were afflicted with illness, exorcise demons, and disseminate his message to the Jewish people. In the fourth episode, we will discover that the 12 apostles have returned from their challenging trip and are struggling to comprehend the significance of the power and responsibility that they have been given. Ask the members of your group. Imagine that you were one of the 12 apostles who were dispatched across the world to help those who were afflicted with illness, to exorcise demons, and to share the message of Jesus with others for the very first time. I am curious in your thoughts on what the experience might have been like. Can you imagine how you would feel by the time it was over? The acquisition of such a high level of power and control would bring about a number of potential threats and temptations. After that, I would explain. The Bible does not show this particular incident in its entirety. However, it does tell us of a comparable event that took place in the future when Jesus dispatched 72 additional disciples on the same kind of mission. One of the members of the group should read the following passage. "Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name." The 72 individuals exclaimed upon their triumphant return of the group. In addition, he spoke to them and stated, "I witnessed Satan fall from heaven like lightning. Behold, I have granted you the power to walk on serpents and scorpions, as well as over all the strength that the adversary possesses, and nothing will be able to harm you whatever. However, you should not delight in this fact, which is that the spirits are brought under your control. Rather, you should rejoice in the fact that your names are inscribed in heaven." In the same hour, Jesus expressed his gratitude to the Holy Spirit and said, "I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, that you have hidden these things from those who are wise and understanding and revealed them to children of a young age. Yes, Father, for such was your gracious will. My Father has given me everything, and no one knows who the Son is but the Father, or who the Father is besides the Son, and anybody else to whom the Son chooses to disclose him. My Father has given me everything." In a private conversation, he then turned his attention to the disciples and remarked, "Blessed are the eyes that see what you see." I tell you this because I hear that many prophets and monarchs wished to see what you see, but they were unable to see it, and they wished to hear what you hear, but they were unable to hear it. Exegesis of Luke 10:17-24. I would like to pose the following question to your group once you have finished reading the passage. Asterisk, what does Jesus mean when he says, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven, and I have given you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions, respectively"? An error may be made by some people when they carelessly underestimate the strength of evil, while others may make a mistake when they frantically underestimate the power of good. What is your typical behavior? The disciples are instructed by Jesus, "Nevertheless, do not rejoice in this, that the spirits are subject to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven." How come? At what point is he protecting them from the temptation? Can you explain what Jesus means when he says that God has hidden these things from the wise and understanding and revealed them to little children? What is the reason that God has chosen to show himself in this manner? The question is, what does it look like for us to be little children rather than the wise and understanding? You can get ready to watch episode 4 by reminding your group of the following after you have finished addressing these questions. In the episode of The Chosen that we are currently watching, the disciples start to struggle with some of the same questions that we have just gone over. After observing the 4th episode of the 3rd season of The Chosen, discussion questions. I usually ask people a handful of fundamental questions after they have watched an episode of The Chosen, which are as follows. Which aspects of the episode stood out to you the most? With what did you feel the strongest connection? Do you have any inquiries or concerns? Were there any unclear points? In the event that the conversation takes on a life of its own, I strongly recommend that you do not feel constrained by the questions that are to follow. Instead, I encourage you to run with it. On the other hand, if you feel that you require additional structure, I will proceed to share. A significant chunk of the show was devoted to laying the groundwork for the episode that will air the following week, which would feature the healing of Veronica, the woman who was suffering from the bleeding disease, as well as the healing of Jairus' daughter. The following time we watch that show, we will devote our attention to delving further into that story. During the last portion of our conversation this week, we are going to concentrate on the trip that the apostles took on their missionary journey and the difficulties that they encountered once it was over. A montage of the disciples traveling around Judea, teaching the gospel, curing the sick, exorcising demons, reasoning with people, and providing care for those who were in need was shown to us at the beginning of the program. Now, I would want to ask you this question. Asterisk, when John and Thomas healed a blind girl in the very first clip, how would you describe their behavior towards the situation? What were their emotions at that precise moment? Can you imagine what was going through their minds at that moment? During the course of the opening montage, what were some of the various ways in which individuals responded to the apostles? What are your thoughts on how it felt to have people react in such a manner? Later on, when Zebedee was at the synagogue, he was taken aback by the fact that his sons, John and Big James, were so quiet. What could have caused them to be so quiet? After some time has passed, as Big James is having a talk at Simon's house, he appears to be becoming agitated and says, "Jesus gave us power but no understanding." Do you have any idea why he is so aggravated? At a certain point, Judas makes the observation that Jesus has not bestowed power upon them, rather he is merely operating through them. What is the significance of this distinction? If so, what is the reason? John is cautioned by Philip that the sensation of power had the potential to be harmful. Is that the case? During the entirety of this chat, Simon is getting into a dispute with Eden, which is causing him to be distracted. What causes Eden to feel so down? Where does she appear to be struggling the most at the moment? After that, when Jesus finally arrives, Simon addresses him in a harsh manner. Additionally, he conveys to Gaius that he is experiencing a degree of exasperation with Jesus. As to why Simon is so aggravated, what are the most fundamental challenges he is facing at the moment? In the episode that we watched today, we saw disciples struggling in a variety of different ways, some of which we haven't gotten to yet. Which of the disciples do you feel you could identify to the most emotionally? How come? In order to bring this discussion to a close, I would want to make the following observation. Asterisk, when we are on mission for Jesus, it can be an emotionally challenging experience. Sometimes we see miraculous occurrences, and it is a really exciting experience. On other occasions, we are confronted with rejection, which can be very disheartening. Asterisk, on other occasions, we are flooded with a variety of inquiries, and we experience feelings of being overwhelmed as we attempt to digest everything. At other times, we are able to feel a sense of peace and tranquility that comes from being in the presence of Jesus. And there are occasions when our return home after ministry is a cause for celebration. On other occasions, we return home exhausted, only to discover that we were not adequately equipped to deal with the issue that we encountered. This episode does not provide us with any simple answers or solutions to our problems. This does, however, serve as a reassuring reminder that the aftermath of ministry is something that each of us has experienced in our own unique way. There is no reason for us to be embarrassed about experiencing feelings of exhaustion or excitement after dedicating our lives to serving Jesus. Regardless of where we are, Jesus is able to meet with us. We will witness Jesus meet his followers in the midst of the tiredness that many of them are experiencing right now in order for him to finally bring them rest. This will take place over the course of the remaining episodes of Season 3. The rest that Jesus provides is something that we too should eventually be able to enjoy.